I wish that I could have knocked him out at the start. But as we saw, I didn't want to put him down early. You all know I was handcuffed. I don't want to say anything that I will be regretting in the future. But all I can say now is the first 20 seconds was enough for me to end Jake Paul.
Win, and guess what? Jake Paul is right again, and this decision will prove to be positive for him.
Yeah.
But that said, he's got a broken jaw.
Done so much for me, and I just am happy and grateful, and just all the life memories that are created through these fight weeks and everything that we've done is just...
You've got to make this kid have a reality check. And that's what he actually did, because Jake Paul himself said...
The news arrived not as a formal announcement, but as a reluctant confirmation from the most trusted source. Logan Paul has publicly stated that his brother, Jake Paul, is stepping away from boxing following the devastating injury sustained against Anthony Joshua. The severity of the injury, a shattered jaw, is the official reason. But the truth is far more complex. Before we can even process the finality of that sentence, we must rewind and understand that this is not a voluntary retirement. This is fallout. This is a desperate, immediate act of damage control to contain a crisis. It is the brutal, undeniable moment a man realized that the currency of internet hype and manufactured bravado offers absolutely no cushion against the bone-jarring impact of elite-level power. That single, defining fight did more than just stop his momentum. It violently and publicly exposed the absolute ceiling of his ability. The most unsettling aspect of the aftermath is the profound, almost unnatural calm that has settled over the boxing world. When the usual cacophony of critics and supporters suddenly falls silent, it signifies a collective, unspoken acceptance of the outcome. This quiet resignation forces a deeper, more cynical question: how much of this feels less like a sudden crisis and more like a predetermined, carefully managed exit strategy?
I hope that life pans out for you, because if you're unable to see this fight for what it is, you have a level of dark hatred, black energy in your heart.
The initial shock was rooted in the sheer bluntness of the statement. Jake is stepping back after the loss and the severity of the broken jaw. For those who have followed his career, this cannot be real. Just a year ago, the narrative was one of world domination, of disrupting the sport and challenging its legends. Now, the vocabulary has been downgraded to recovery and reflection. This linguistic shift is a critical indicator. In the unforgiving world of professional combat, words like reflect and step away are never deployed unless a fundamental, non-negotiable failure has occurred behind the scenes, a failure that is either profoundly physical, psychologically debilitating, or a devastating combination of both. The persistent, nagging suspicion remains that there are more medical details being deliberately withheld from the public. This is a calculated attempt by his camp to soften the blow and manage the narrative before the full, unvarnished truth about the extent of the trauma inevitably leaks out.
Yeah. I'm going to take some time off to go support Utah at the Olympics.
So sick.
Then she's going to move to Puerto Rico, move her here.
The public statements from the Paul camp attempted to strike a noble tone, but the effort failed. It sounded less like a fighter's promise and more like a final goodbye, wrapped in a thin veneer of positivity. When professional fighters begin to list past achievements and fond memories, instead of outlining a clear, aggressive plan for their future, it is the most potent red flag in the sport. Furthermore, the immediate, widespread praise for his resilience feels profoundly disingenuous. Resilience is the word you use to offer consolation when victory has been permanently removed from the conversation. It is a patronizing comfort. And this is where the first true, deep chill sets in. The boxing community is not engaged in a debate about when he will return, but rather a somber discussion about if he should ever be allowed to. That profound shift in discourse alone is the clearest measure of how deep and how damaging this cut actually goes.
Body, I mean, that, I wasn't being facetious before, but like, you never know the landscape of this, but more likely he's thought this is a good time to bow out or got a few niggles. And
while the initial speculation was facetious, the reality is that Jake Paul may have simply decided this was the opportune moment to bow out, perhaps due to accumulating minor injuries or niggles. However, the intervention of veteran promoter Eddie Hearn immediately cast a darker, more serious shadow over the situation. Hearn did not frame this as an emotional or temporary setback. He framed it in terms of stark, physical reality: a broken jaw, accumulated damage, and the body finally talking back. That phrase, the body talking back, should be a terrifying warning to every fighter. When a boxer's own physical form becomes the loudest, most authoritative voice in the room. The career clock is not just ticking, it is screaming its final seconds. To call his exit calculated is not a compliment. It is a grim acceptance. It is the industry acknowledging, we have seen this pattern before, and history dictates that it does not reverse. The persistent rumor is that a comprehensive doctor's report detailing the true severity of the trauma exists, and the Paul camp is desperately trying to keep it from public view.
Jake Paul knew exactly what his tactics would be going into that fight. He was in there just to survive. He wasn't in there to win. He didn't even try to win. He couldn't win. So when you know in your mindset, you know in your mind's eye, I can't win that fight. What do? I've got to survive. How do I survive? I've got to run.
He's a big personality and he sells fights so well, and he's a big character, and the press conferences, the build-up to fights, and what he delivers in the ring. The guy is a serious talent, and he'll be missed when he's retired.
The analysis became uncomfortable very quickly when it was suggested that Jake Paul entered the fight with the primary goal of survival, not victory. Once that idea takes root, it is impossible to unsee. A survival mindset is a guaranteed death sentence at the elite level of any combat sport. When seasoned analysts observe that his every movement was focused on avoiding damage, it fundamentally reframes the entire bout not as a contest, but as a controlled, strategic collapse. This raises the second, more disturbing question: if Jake knew he could not win, why was this fight allowed to happen at all? Who, in the hierarchy of promoters and regulators, greenlit a mission of mere survival against a nuclear heavyweight like Anthony Joshua? The moral and ethical responsibility for this mismatch is a question that still hangs heavy in the air.
Like, other than boxing, there's a lot of egos involved, if that makes sense. Like, he said this, he said that, and I want this, I want that.
The praise offered by Spencer Oliver for Jake Paul's performance felt almost cruelly ironic in hindsight, applauding a fighter for survival after witnessing him visibly crumble under the immense pressure of a world-class opponent is the very definition of irony. This moment was the final, definitive snap of the illusion. The immense power of social media fame, the millions of followers, the carefully constructed brand, all of it evaporated the instant genuine, elite power made contact. This retreat is not the loss of a star. It is a collective, industry-wide sigh of relief. Relief that this dangerous, high-stakes experiment did not conclude in a tragedy far worse than a broken jaw. If that statement causes discomfort, it should, because everyone with an understanding of the sport knows precisely how close this came to being an absolute catastrophe.
But I think Jake fought a very, how do I survive long enough to land a right hand type of fight? And it made it a little difficult for AJ to get his timing. No excuses. AJ didn't look great. I'll be honest. He didn't look great. Didn't look like, an AJ we thought we were going to get, the marauder, the guy that was going to come forward and bang out Jake in one round. Pause.
The veteran voices are unified in their assessment. Jake Paul honestly should not have been in that ring. Their collective judgment calling the loss humiliating, but inevitable cut straight through the noise of the hype machine. Online toughness and manufactured bravado simply do not translate into physical defense. When a true heavyweight unloads with ill intent, the boy who cried wolf analogy is painful because it fits the situation with such devastating accuracy. This leads to the third, most persistent spike of paranoia, when multiple veterans, from different camps and with different loyalties, use the exact same language. It suggests a private, shared agreement on a truth they are reluctant to state publicly. Tyson Fury's reaction poured gasoline on the narrative, ensuring that humiliation became the dominant, indelible word associated with the fight. That word, once it sticks, never washes off. Hospital footage and one-sided beatdowns are permanent fixtures in the public memory. When Fury delivers the line, "boxer in name only," it is not mere trash talk. It is a definitive, professional verdict. And that verdict echoes because boxing is a sport that never forgets who got exposed. The profound silence from Jake Paul's camp right now is not a sign of respect. It is a sign of profound, strategic defeat.
So much back. He should have either grabbed on, took a knee, or at least threw a bit more back. He was sitting back with his guard up, taking punches. It looked messy. It looked like he was under attack, and he was hurt.
The commentary from Froch was merciless. In its clinical assessment, he described a man overwhelmed, disoriented, and systematically absorbing punishment without any credible answers or counter-strategy. If that sounds harsh, remember that millions watched it live. Jake Paul did not fight intelligently. He merely endured. And endurance without a credible threat to the opponent is nothing more than prolonged humiliation. Froch's devastating conclusion that this was not a battle, but a demonstration is a powerful indictment. Demonstrations exist to teach lessons, and in that ring, Jake Paul became the lesson for every other crossover fighter with outsized ambition.
Bridge with my brother, unfixable.
I don't hate your brother. You guys need to fight guys your fucking same size. When you fought Floyd, you are massive. He did hit you with a fucking bomb, and you fought.
Well, the fight was, it weren't a fight, was it? Really, really one-sided. Jake Paul, yeah, I've got to give him credit, really, because he's super fit. He's pretty clever, really. Like, he'd make a good journeyman.
The final, devastating blow to the narrative was the framing of this event as a collision between mismatched ambition and unforgiving reality. Taking a clean, full power shot from Anthony Joshua is not a character-building moment. It is a career-ending event. Dana White's immediate, sharp reaction, calling the fight a warning, should send a profound shiver down the spine of every single crossover fighter. This was not entertainment. This was a line crossed, a boundary violated, and a dangerous precedent set. And once that line is crossed in the heavyweight division, there is no rewind button, only the cold, hard, and permanent consequences.
So yes, it took AJ a couple of rounds to get hold of him, and then he knocked him spark out and broke his jaw. It was a frustrating 2-3 rounds maybe, because Jake was moving so much.
I'm glad Anthony Joshua did that too, because now he won't be able to talk like he does for a while. We won't have to listen to his book.
The most damning assessment came from the real boxing fans, who stated that Jake Paul's cleverness, his movement, his feints, his ring IQ could not possibly hide the fundamental lack of power and defensive structure required at this level. That is the unvarnished truth that no amount of spin can obscure. Ring IQ, when divorced from the physical answers to back it up, collapses instantly under elite pressure. And when that happens, retirement ceases to be a choice and becomes the only logical, mathematical path forward. The equation is simple and brutal. Damage plus mismatch equals disaster. And disaster was not a possibility. It was already knocking at the door. Even when analysts attempted to compliment Jake Paul's fitness, the praise backfired spectacularly. Being super fit while being systematically dismantled only serves to prove how vast the chasm in skill truly is. Eddie Hearn's comment that the final punch would have slept most pros reframes the entire event. Jake Paul didn't just lose. He absorbed a shot meant for champions. And absorbing it does not make you equal. It makes you profoundly vulnerable. Vulnerability at this level is lethal.
Kid has a broken jaw, it appears, after fighting Anthony Joshua, right? I made this graphic for you guys. You see it. Got his jaw broken in 2 places.
Care of me forever and ever? Little fucked up. But when you take care of me forever and ever? Little fucked up.
This is a sentence, not commentary. And it is a brutal one. Jake Paul literally asked for this by stepping up to this level. This statement hits differently when you review the official injury reports. The fact that he was not entirely incapacitated is being called miraculous, which tells you everything you need to know about how close this came to tragedy. That is not drama. That is reality. And when reality steps in with that kind of force, retirement stops being a choice and starts being a non-negotiable requirement for long-term health and safety.
It's a fucking piss take that this guy's in there with Anthony Joshua, swinging away, landing. What's he done? He's had 18 minutes and landed 2 shots, and he's gone on survival mode. And there'll be a lot of viewers on net.
My opinion, he won 4 of them. Just had 1 of them. People will argue that he at least won 3. No one expected him to last that long. Rolled his ankle, broke his jaw, still fucking fighting, man. Like, that's toughness. You know, most people wouldn't have the balls ever to step in a boxing ring in their life. He stepped in a boxing ring with one of the baddest men on the planet. Who's 40 pounds heavier than him is 6.
The lingering damage from a fight like this changes everything. Reflexes, confidence, and career trajectory. Boxing is a sport that does not forgive hesitation or compromise. Anyone pretending this is a temporary setback is lying to themselves. A jaw broken into places is not a storyline. It is a full stop. And here is the final. Most unsettling unease. No one in the industry is asking what fight comes next. They are only asking how bad it could have been. The illusion of upward trajectory is gone. Boxing is cruel about that. Once you are framed as someone who survived instead of someone who threatened, the matchmaking changes forever and the audience changes too. Jake Paul will not want to exist in that version of the sport where his ceiling has been publicly and violently enforced. This was exposure wrapped in spectacle. Jake Paul's boxing chapter did not close quietly. It cracked under the unforgiving pressure of the elite level. Whether you respect his courage or despise his hype, the outcome is identical. Elite boxing made its point, and the silence from the industry now feels intentional, strategic. Something tells me we still haven't heard the full, unvarnished medical truth. And when that truth finally emerges, this conversation is going to get exponentially darker. This was the sport of boxing forcefully correcting a lie that had been allowed to grow unchecked. Anthony Joshua didn't just punch Jake Paul. He punctured the bubble around crossover credibility. And once that bubble popped, the rush to soften the sound tells us the industry knew exactly what it was risking and accepted it anyway. This was a brutal, necessary lesson. Heavyweights don't trade in learning experiences. They trade in consequences. And fantasy doesn't bleed quietly when it ends. The final, chilling thought is that Logan Paul's confirmation felt less like brotherly concern and more like a line drawn for self-preservation. Once one brother absorbs that level of punishment, the other has to reassess the entire brand. Stepping away isn't just about healing, it's about containment.